Welcome to this not-so-common podcast. I'm Pat Contra, your host, and this week we'll be talking with Frank. Now, Frank has appeared in many Pat the NES Punk videos in the past, as well as Flea Market Madness, and he has his own YouTube series called Ask Frank. He's in his 60s, he's originally from New Jersey, and he's a great friend of mine. So, without further ado, let's have a conversation with Frank. Welcome to Not So Common with Pat Contry. This is my non-gaming podcast, and I'm here with Frank. If you've seen my videos before throughout the years, or asked Frank, you know who Frank is, but Frank, you want to give a little background about where you grew up, who you are?
I thought you didn't want me to tell everybody who I was.
You grew up in Jersey, right?
Yeah, grew up in Jersey in childhood of 50s. Went through the whole revolution, that stuff, late 60s, early 70s.
The revolution. You mean the upheaval, the social and political upheaval of the 60s?
Yes. Yeah.
We'll get into that a little bit. And then you survived the Reagan 80.
Oh, yeah. Well, I lived in OB then, and it was easy to do that because, you could be down there and not know what year it was or who the president was or whatever. It's all hippies, so it was fine.
Oh, man.
So they can see us, too?
No, Frank. We're just recording audio. No one can see us.
Oh.
It's a podcast. It's like radio.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was video. I wouldn't have showered then. I didn't have to shower then.
It's Wednesday, so it was that day of the week.
Right.
There's no camera here.
Watch out for this water. You're going to ruin your computer.
Oh, thanks, Frank.
Jesus.
So I want to talk to you because we always have conversations that usually turn to politics. And, Trump's president now, and you probably have some thoughts on that for sure. But one of the sort of themes you're seeing now with people, I know that we're polarized and social media doesn't help, was that like this is going to be, a really bad presidential time. Who knows what can happen in the world? This could be a disaster. And as someone like you, a lot of people listening to the podcast don't have the experience of having lived through, 50 years and multiple presidents in different time periods. Do you have a perspective about, the current time period, how it feels versus, especially like in the 60s and 70s with, stuff like Kennedy and then the Vietnam War and then Nixon,
right.
What do you think when you hear people say that? Do you think that is that justified, their reasoning, or is they're not used to, they haven't been alive long enough to sort of see other presidents in different time periods to sort of have a way to compare?
Well, I don't know if you have to compare so much, but you still can judge the person on what he does now. And I don't know how much you have to judge in the what the past has to do with it. I'm just amazed that the thing that I compare it to is a guy like that could be president, where when I grew up and was a kid, that couldn't happen. It seemed like there was more, I hate to say it, is more serious. I mean, it's almost like because he was on TV, he could be president. You know what I mean? And
didn't that happen with Reagan though? I mean, he was, big
man. Reagan actor. Seems like a statesman compared to this guy. But
Reagan was an actor that became governor.
But he was the governor of California
before. So you're saying that
at least he had something. And it's funny. The one thing I do think is funny about politics is how people want somebody who's not a politician to be the president or the politician or to get rid of anybody with experience, where I wouldn't want a plumber coming over who never did it before. I would want a guy that had experience. And it seems like every other job, no matter how menial or high or whatever, all the way from a guy like me, a gardener, all the way to like maybe an arbitrage trader, you want somebody that has a little experience, except when it comes to politics. most people want somebody who's not in the system, who's new, who never did it before, and somehow that is better in that one job on the earth, which I very rarely understand.
Well, we've seen this before. I mean, there's been third-party candidates before. I mean, the biggest one of our lifetime was Ross Perot in '92, and Ross Perot got 19% of the vote. I mean, that was because of him. That's the reason that H.W. Bush wasn't reelected if it wasn't for him. So,
well, you could say the same thing about Nader screwing the pooch for Gore, because if Nader doesn't run, I can't believe Gore doesn't win.
But the point is that there's always going to be a part of the populace that wants an outsider to come in because they're sick of the system, what they believe to be either corrupt or just so rusted and
I understand that
it can't move.
But maybe there's a way to get someone with experience who's new, or something like a congressman, or somebody that at least has a feel for the job. It just seems like, it's almost like I don't want that driver. He knows how to drive. I want a guy that never drove before, so I get something new. It's unbelievable to me.
So you're looking at the advantage of being a career politician to know exactly how
there is some advantage to that, but I also see your point where you're locked into the system so deep you don't have a feel
outside of it.
And you don't have a feel for the populace. I get that. But I would want a little bit of experience.
So obviously that's why Trump got elected, because people were sick of the status quo.
And also Hillary Clinton was the worst candidate ever because...
Now you're saying that and you're a Democrat.
Yes, full-on Democrat. Because if she campaigned correctly and wasn't so divisive, maybe woman, maybe a guy couldn't...
Deplorables comment kind of hurt her?
Well... different things along the way. She had a history which maybe hurt her.
Wall Street in her back pocket kind of hurt.
All that stuff. But she was a bad campaigner because she gave up on places that she thought were in the bag, and I don't think you can ever do that.
Like
in
Wisconsin
any game.
And Michigan.
Yes.
Where people thought there's no way that she could lose.
Not those. Like Wisconsin and Michigan. Wisconsin and Michigan specifically.
And then Pennsylvania.
Yes.
The coup d'etat, which remember I said whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election.
Yeah, that's, I mean... and you can't take things for granted, whether it's a business job you think you're going to get, or a game you think you're going to win, or an election. You have to fight all the way to the end, and I don't think... She was just a terrible candidate, and probably the only person he could have beaten.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And then I don't know how many people wouldn't vote for her. I don't know how, because she's a woman, I don't know how many people would say one thing, go into the voting booth, and then just can't do it.
You think so? You think there's
I think
part of the public that wouldn't do that?
I think it's a certain amount, but I think it's way less than maybe it's ever been.
Especially since we re-elected a black president.
Right.
At least partially.
Well, the one thing my dad was right about, that there would be a black president before an Italian president.
Did he really say that?
Oh, yeah. He said that in the 60s because...
Why do you think that?
Because there would be people throughout the country that could not think the guy wasn't connected.
So at least he knew what he was doing because he'd have people around him, you mean?
Well, there would be people in the country, especially between the coasts, let's say, that would never believe the guy wasn't connected to gangsters somehow.
Oh, I see.
See what I mean? So, and he was right. He predicted that, that, and it was true. It turned out to be true, and he almost was true about a woman too, because she was pretty close. She actually won the popular vote.
Sure.
Before there'd be an Italian president, which there probably never will be. He thought that there would be a black president before.
That's why people were scared about JFK, because they're thinking he would answer to the Pope. He was the first and only Catholic president.
Right. Yeah.
Which is just silly.
Well, yeah. Even as a Catholic, we thought it was silly because half of the Catholics I knew didn't answer to the Pope.
They don't go to church. Catholics don't have a good reputation for being faithful to their religion. We'll just say in general. But so I'm glad you said that, because one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton wasn't elected was because
it's her fault.
Well, I was going to say a lot of a chunk of counties, especially Middle America, that voted for Barack Obama, then reelected him, went for Trump this time. Which is why when people
go figure.
Well, which is why when people just throw out, well, Trump has a bunch of racist supporters, and of course there's always a fringe, but that's not the only answer to what went on there.
No, it's part of it. There's never only one answer for anything, which is why I can't listen to political talk radio, because they
think they always know the exact answer.
It's bumper sticker,
bumper sticker politics,
mentality. It's everything has a simple answer, which of course you realize in the real world it doesn't. There's no simple answers.
So the people, I mean, you can sense that people are afraid and fearful right now. Certain parts of the population because
especially the people I know, but.
Any Mexican immigrants, you mean?
Yeah, and also, maybe more liberal people that have more liberal politics. Definitely the environment is going to come under attack, even worse than you think Bush might have done it or this or that, but nowhere near what this guy's trying to do, because he comes from a business perspective.
He wants to unshackle.
And he just wants to unshackle, thinking that's the way to go. But, the reason there is an EPA and environmental movement is because business had been unshackled forever and didn't pay attention to anything.
This is an interesting article. Former EPA head says White House budget an attack on agency and science. Let me put the volume down here. The proposed cuts would be devastating for the agency's ability to protect public health, Gina McCarthy said.
Yeah, and they do it in a subtle way. I remember when Reagan was in office, they didn't cut what looked like the budget for the EPA, but what he did slash was enforcement.
Sure.
So in other words, they were out there running around doing what they were doing, but then there was no backup to what they found out, and that was the way they sort of skirted the laws and stuff, because they slashed the budget for enforcement. So they were always 10 spills behind, we have
to keep in mind at this point, a lot of these things are executive orders getting done, which means you're either undoing an executive order from before or instituting a new one. So you have to remember that even if something's being undone, the status quo existed before that executive order, maybe during George W.'s presidency. But this is one that will come under scrutiny. President Donald Trump will sign Tuesday an executive order requiring the EPA to review Obama-era water regulations to make sure they are not harming the economy, according to an internal EPA email outlined by CNN. On the surface, that could be bad. We have to know what exactly that means, though. As it goes along.
Well,
that doesn't mean we're just going to dump toxic sludge into the water, we hope.
Usually when a guy does that to tighten it up, he's nowhere near as radical as the people trying to get the water clean.
Sure.
So he's not even there. And he's undoing that, is what I mean. You know what I'm saying?
Pat here, and I hope you're enjoying this conversation about politics with Frank. At some point, the recording accidentally paused for a couple of minutes, so we're going to restart it now with Frank talking about Middle Eastern policy and needing someone with experience already in progress.
Because even when we went into the Middle East, we were able to get a lot of the European countries to come on board. And it wasn't by telling them, you got to do this because you're all wimps or we're carrying the weight. They did it in some way, and everybody joined in.
So you're saying Trump should have some tact when speaking to these other nations, even if the idea might be good. Don't just go up half-cocked and say, "Hey, NATO, if you don't pay your fair share, we're going to pull out." And
even if the guy on the streets thinks the president of France is an asshole, the president can't say that to him in public.
So is this better or worse or the same with someone like Nixon's notorious for being a president that was derided by everyone?
Okay, Nixon, wow.
Especially with the Vietnam War going on.
Yeah, well, he did a lot of weird. a lot. Yeah, he did a lot of bad things, and he did a couple good things. I mean, he just
He did what, Medicare, right?
And actually, I think he did the EPA.
He did do the EPA,
and he opened up relations with China. Instead of kicking him in the teeth, he actually went there. You know what I mean? And because you can't ignore a quarter of the world's population.
Sure.
Maybe you couldn't 1830. You can't do it anymore. The world's, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But the other thing was, he was such a paranoid personality that he thought everybody was his enemy, and he had the thing about him. He was always trying to throw John Lennon out of the country. Why? I don't know.
Really call him like a dirty commie or something?
Well, he was. They were always trying to get him busted for pot so they could kick him out. I mean, it was like ridiculous. The guy's a guitar player, basically. He's a poet. Leave him. I mean, what's he gonna do?
So.
I mean, what was he?
So the comparisons to like someone like Trump to Nixon, you have to obviously wait and see. Trump's only been in office for over a month. But the Vietnam War was going on for most of the presidency.
Right, and then he timed it to end right before his second election, so he could say he ended the war, and everybody knew it. Because my dad told me, he goes, the war's going to end in October or September. I go, why? Because the election's in November. That's why. And it was true.
So your dad predicted a black president before
an Italian,
before a female president too, or just Italian?
No, Italian president.
Oh, because the connection.
Because the connections to the mafia that people couldn't shake, and he was right about that, and he was right about the war ending because he knew, and it ended in September. Right before the November election.
He got reelected, but then the Watergate scandal.
Well, yeah, and then the Watergate wasn't even. Like, if you really look at it, the book that those two guys wrote is fantastic. And the movie is very good, too, even though you know what's going to happen. The movie is still fascinating. Yeah, and the book is fascinating. But, I mean, he was going to win anyway, but he was still making sure that anybody with half a chance got submarined.
So
like Muskie. They submarined Muskie, and they made it so the only guy running was McGovern, and McGovern couldn't get elected mayor of Maplewood, you know what I mean? Like, let alone president.
So if Trump actually enacts stuff that even I would say I agree with, that wouldn't be unreasonable. I guess people are gonna have to make a decision where their hatred for a narcissistic nature of someone who acts like a demagogue will that be able to be overridden by actual policy? So
it depends what the policy is and how it affects everybody.
So this is
which is like any president, and he's going to have. It's going to be good and bad, and then, of course, you have to give it time. That's the other thing about a presidency. Sometimes you have to wait 10 years or more just to see the stuff that they put in motion. Does it work out, or is it a disaster?
So economically, I agree with stuff like pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, pulling out of NAFTA, which even Bernie agreed with, and then simplifying the tax code. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, that's been people have been talking about that since I understood what the word meant.
And then lowering the corporate tax code to be competitive with the rest of the world, so that companies don't leave our shores or inclined to come back and create new jobs.
Right. Well, if
we can pull some of that off, I think. And people actually get jobs back. I'm not saying we're going to have industry the same way we had it in the 40s and 50s, but even when we return, 20 or 30% of the industry back to this nation over time,
right?
That would go a long way.
But those guys, I don't know. I always thought they were phonies, because the same guys that used to argue against like any environmental law inhibiting business as the first guy to leave and go set up a factory where he could get the labor for 4 cents an hour. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I don't trust the guy at all.
You don't trust corporations. You don't trust Trump.
No, I don't. Well, all of them. They're all liars, and they're all looking out for themselves, which everybody does, but they do it on a grand scale, and they very rarely get in trouble for anything. And he's that guy as the president, and he views it in that way. That's the problem to me with him. He's viewing it as he's running a company, and he's going to do stuff.
You're saying he's running the government as a CEO, basically.
Yeah,
and you don't like that attitude.
And no, because he's going to do stuff that in the business world he thinks is fine and might be okay. But in the government, you have other things to think about, and you have to be the president to everybody, not just the shareholders.
So in your opinion, like reviewing the EPA rules, Obama-era water regulations that might help out a company here or there. You see that as an overextension. It might be dangerous because of the...
It depends what he does, yeah. And then because every time they throw, they think everything's okay, they go back to what it was, and then it just does what it did before, and then it's bad again.
Yeah, I don't know. I always come and go from
right. I don't trust the guy on the face of it. I just don't trust him. I'm sorry.
Do you trust the GOP Congress to rein him in a bit, or use?
I don't understand how they can't after a while, but who knows? I mean, they're Republicans. I mean,
Hey,
I know.
I'm not a Republican, but that's how we demonize the entire side.
No,
well, the thing is, they couldn't go against him because they're up for election and re-election when the president gets elected. Every 4 years and every 2 years. So, but you're right that they have to at least always hold it open where you really have to fall in line with us, or none of your bills that you want to get passed.
Yeah, you have to, which every president faces,
yes,
even from his own party.
And then you do have that good old, the impeachment's always in the back pocket.
Yeah, but that's so extreme.
But I'm just saying, it's always there.
Yes,
which is why I've always said to people that were, people close to me that had to calm down about Trump before and after election. That hey, there's checks and balances in place. The founding fathers, I'm not saying they're all geniuses, but they set up a pretty good system. No, but it's a pretty
good system. And I just hope that maybe, if he goes off really weird, you get guys from both sides of the aisle going, all right.
Sure. Well, the other sides are ready to do that, for the most part. So,
but we got, let's at least, tamper it down a little bit. And then I just worry about the foreign policy. I mean, the one thing we've learned about the way the world is, there's no war front. It's just kooks like nuts. It is.
Well,
it's terrorists and stuff. It's not like you go to war with a country and here's the line and the armies clash. That's over.
Well,
that's done.
You had proxy wars. You had Russia go
but
to
the
Ukraine
thing with the problem with the saber rattling of the past, if you do it now, all that ends up happening is some church of whatever denomination you want to pick gets blown up somewhere, or a subway or whatever, and because that's what all you do with those guys is egg them on. You scream out something and 2 months later a bomb goes off somewhere, and and that's what they react to.
So is what you're saying coincide with fighting like Al Qaeda or ISIS?
Yeah, that all should be done,
covertly.
Yeah,
without us even knowing about it.
And then we should be going after these guys and knocking them off and doing whatever we do. And if somebody says something, we should just shrug. What? So who died?
So
who?
One of the
but screaming and going off on it is just sort of pumping them up to me.
So one of the controversies right now is the fact that the last presidency refused to use the terms radical Islamic terrorism, and that was one of the not rallying cries, but one of the main points of someone like Trump was saying, why can't we say the words of this is what these people are?
Right.
So would you be for or against using that term if that's what describes?
I think if it's done
neatly or
minimal and for a specific thing, and maybe after the fact, it's probably okay. But saying it just as a blanket thing is only going to get more of them pissed off.
You think so?
Yes.
You don't think they're already pissed off enough to kill us?
But it's not going to help. I don't think it helps. And everybody knows what it is anyway. But I think we should be totally involved in discovering as much of it as we can. Getting the guys that we need to get and bringing in as many other countries in it as possible, because that helps with intelligence.
Sure.
Because there were a couple times that we stopped guys in this country from bombing stuff because we were talking to guys in Jordan. So you can't say stuff to eliminate them from the circle because they're on the ground able to get intelligence maybe we can't, because they're Muslims. They can infiltrate. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And we need those guys too. We have to, because they're going to find stuff out that it's impossible for us to find out.
Human contact intel is the best.
Yes, and we have to keep a certain amount of them in the loop, so they'll tell us when something's going to screw up.
Keep the rhetoric to a minimum so we can recruit some of these people as our allies. I mean, that's what helped get us close to Bin Laden. In order to get to them, I mean, we had to have human intel on the ground.
Yes, because the satellites are great, and it sees stuff, and all the sophisticated weapon, and all the other stuff. But without people
human
that
intel,
can either speak Arabic or on the ground in these countries that are willing to tell us if something's going on, we're not going to know anything. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, who are you going to send over there? You know, fuck.
Bobby Ray from
he ain't going to...
he's not going to be able to infiltrate.
No, he's not. No.
Throw some dirt on him.
Right. And I remember when I was there was a woman that worked in Hydroscape in the office, and she was Arabic of descent, but she was fluent. And after 9/11 or this whole thing happened, they came to her, the government, and she ended up going to Washington, and she's a translator now. That's her. She has a big time job.
She's getting paid, like those government benefits.
And because she was, and then when they would see emails or whatever they had, messages, whatever, she could translate it immediately. She was fluent in it. And you need that. You need that to happen. And we have to, every once in a while, we got to kill a couple guys. But as long as we kill the right guys, I don't care.
So you've said that Hillary was an awful candidate, and you are
terrible candidate,
and you are a Democrat.
Yes,
and you're
but that's still the truth.
I mean, what type of Democrat would you have preferred? Would it be someone like Bernie Sanders, who's more on the socialist side?
Either that, or someone who was centrist without having sort of the arrogance. In other words, it was almost like she expected it or thought she deserved it.
Because she thought she deserved it 8 years ago, and it shocked the people that she didn't get the
just
nomination.
The fact that the way she campaigned
and came off,
I was very upset and worried about it, because you can't take the voter. I mean, the voter right away could see if they're getting taken for granted,
do you think,
and they have the final say, and people can get pissed off and vote against you.
Do you think that fact that it was public that she took speaking fees from places like Goldman Sachs and other?
I don't think that matters as much. I think it was. I think she wasn't on the ground saying that this is a big deal. This is a big deal right now, and you need me or you need our party, whatever it was. She was a little bit aloof and just thought she was just gonna
skate through.
It was like not an election; it was like a coronation. And people pick up on that, and they get
subconsciously?
Pissed. And they get even consciously, and they get pissed about it.
Like it's like with the flyover states, whenever you get all these Hollywood actors that come out passionately pleading for,
yes.
For Hillary, and why was someone in Nebraska doesn't have a job give a shit about what a Hollywood actress has to say?
But that's exactly why she has to go to Nebraska herself and say that you guys matter.
And where she would need to go, Wisconsin,
Michigan, Pennsylvania, and say you guys matter. And she didn't do that.
And I'm going to help you guys get jobs back, since that's why you're voting for Trump. Even though you're not a racist, probably, you want your jobs back. You voted for Obama twice.
Right.
You're voting for Trump.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's about jobs, and she could even bring up fairness in the judiciary and all that.
Do you think?
But she wasn't on the ground enough making her case, because I think in the back of her head she thought, I made the case, me being me,
and I'm up against a clown.
And yes, and it pissed enough people off to say, "Well, screw you! I can vote for the clown."
as Frank goes away, I'll ask the question.
I need a glass of water.
Okay, that's fine. I'll ask the question. A lot of people say that like Trump spoke to all the out of work, white workers in Middle America, that their jobs left them and they haven't come back in the past 8 years. Do you think that the fact that the Democrats didn't speak to that as well as they should?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that cost them, and I just didn't think she was out there enough. And also even I thought it. And I was already decided. I knew I wasn't going to vote for Trump, but I already thought that she looked like she thought she had it.
So you voted? Did you vote for Hillary?
Yeah.
Did you think she earned your vote, or was it a pro?
No, I voted against Trump the way a lot of people voted against Hillary. I think that's the unfortunate thing with this particular election.
Where it was just people.
No, I voted for Bernie in the primary, but.
Do you like how the DNC treated Bernie? From what you've heard and seen?
I think that was pretty, that was very 50-ish, 1950s. Where they had their guy and everybody else gets muscled out.
What people forget is that the DNC has what's called superdelegates, which the Republicans don't, which are people that can vote for whatever the hell they want. And it has nothing to do with the will of the people. So I think, and they do that so they don't elect a disaster.
Right.
So you can say if the Republicans had that, it would not have been Donald Trump. It would have been Ted Cruz. But you can say that's less democratic than the process.
Well, I think their party should be able to put up whoever they want in any way, unless unless you're just going to go strictly who wins the primaries. But. I'm not naive enough to know that they looked at it and figured he couldn't win the national election because he was too far to the left. And they figured, plus Hillary at that moment, but 3-4 months before the election, no one thought she was going to lose.
Sure.
The problem was, as it went on, they should have taken him more seriously. They go, okay, we still think we're going to win, but we need to get out there and squash him. It was like a game where you're winning big and you fall back instead of stepping on the other guy's neck, and you let him back in the game. Sure. And then all of a sudden you're in trouble and you don't know what to do.
Do you think there was an authenticity problem with Hillary versus someone like Bernie, where Bernie, you see what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
With Hillary, that for the most part, what she's saying is what she knows people want to hear. We're talking. Your eyes just went googly-eyed.
She's almost like when I was saying about you need experienced politicians. She's almost a little too much.
Almost.
There's a certain point where it's.
Plus, she's attached to the whole Clinton, brigade, and going back to Arkansas way back, and you're dealing with that whole, I guess, triumvirate now. With Chelsea.
Could.
Do you agree with those that were pissed about the popular vote? Do they want to abolish electoral college? Do you agree with that, or do you think there's?
Well, they've been talking about that forever, and there's been a couple of elections now recently, which never happened before.
There was a few others in our history, but 2 in 15 years.
Yeah, which there's no precedent for that, and I don't even remember.
Not in your lifetime, but they happened.
I don't remember in my lifetime ever a president losing the popular election and winning the electoral college, and then it happened twice in the past 15 years.
Both Republicans. Wow, but Bush did win re-election handily though in 2004. That wasn't a problem against Kerry.
Kerry is too much of a human being to get elected president. Here's a guy that was an actual war hero that they flipped around to make it look like he didn't do what he said, and then the guy who avoided the war by going in the National Guard, which is different than it is now, they didn't question that. See, now the National Guard, because it's a volunteer army, you can get called up and you actually go to the front. But in the 60s, in the Vietnam War, everybody knew it. When you joined the National Guard, it was a way to avoid going to Vietnam because it was a drafted army and no National Guardsman ever left the continental United States.
My argument against when people think that, well, Hillary won the popular vote, that's why we should abolish the electoral college. My argument always is, if it was a popular vote, Trump would have campaigned differently to match. It wouldn't have been as simple as if it was popular vote, the same result would have happened. You would have had Trump going to the cities, and that's the reason why the electoral college exists. Because if it didn't exist, you have the candidates going to the 10 major metropolitan areas to do the most of their campaigning, which means the rest of the country doesn't fucking matter anymore. Like, go to hell, middle of the country, because there's not enough votes to even spread around to match L.A., Miami, New York, Atlanta, Chicago. That's always San Diego even. May not even matter as much, but that's what I always say, is that you're getting the buy-in.
Well, I never said you should eliminate it. I'm just saying that it
can happen.
It happens.
Because we were a republic, and the states elect the president, not the people. And I think people forget that. We were a federation of states.
It's not
a straight democracy.
Yeah, like, Greece.
The argument, how I was explaining to it, was that you need the electoral college because you're working with states, and if the states didn't vote you in, the majority of the states,
right,
what do you have? You don't have actually the support of most of the country if you don't have the states supporting you. And that's the key difference. But whatever, you can always try to change the Constitution, but good luck getting the states like Rhode Island to say we want to get.
Well, it's not Rhode Island so much. It's more like Nebraska or Missouri that wouldn't go for it.
But it's any state with a small population.
Yeah. They would feel
they're disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Why be?
Well, they get their 2 senators.
Well, but that's the electoral college, the 2 senators versus the number of congressmen.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. That's why it's the checks and balances.
Yeah, which is good. Well, we'll see. I mean, who knows? Usually when a guy like this gets elected, the one good thing on my end is that it energizes the environmental community.
Greenpeace gets all the money that everyone before.
Yeah, when Reagan was president, every Audubon, Greenpeace, Native Plant Society, they went off on membership. They never had so many people.
So let me ask you, as someone who's been a lifelong Democrat, what would be your sort of, if you can envision what you think would be a good Democratic Party to get what you think would be back on track? Because now they're kind of split about what direction to go, whether to stay with the identity politics.
Well, the problem with any party is you have to be true to what your values, but you have to come a little bit to the center to attract independents or moderates or whatever. You can't be as whacked out as me and get elected. You have to be a moderate. But then you can't give up on what is the core values, like the environment, equal justice, which still is a problem in this country. And you still, to me, you have to go back to maybe appealing more to the working guy, because years ago, that's where the Democrats were. They were regular guys, regular workers. I mean, it's just, I think most people are the same. They just want to feel safe and have a job, and their kids be able to walk down the street not in fear. That's all I'm saying. And I just think it's a more inclusive party, and that's why
You think it's more inclusive now? It was more inclusive 50 years ago as well?
Yes, years ago it was even more, because I think the Republicans were even less inclusive than they are now, maybe. I'm not sure.
You think they're less inclusive now? Well, you grew up during the...
No, I think the Democrats are basically the same as far as inclusive. Although there are things that happened during history divided people up a lot, like after the civil rights movement, and all that in the 60s, and the equal rights, the entire South went Republican, because they viewed the Democrats as the one that let the black guy eat at the lunch counter. Mm-hmm. So they all turned into Republicans. Not that I would ever think a guy wouldn't think that he'd be just because he's a Republican. I just don't believe that.
You're saying they shifted to that party.
They shifted to that party because they blamed the Democrats for that.
Well, you grew up. Speaking of that, you grew up in a time, 60s, the height of the civil rights movement, civil unrest, riots in major cities like Chicago, and we're seeing lots of protests now. We're seeing the Black Lives Matter
right.
Like, how can you compare the two, or do you?
And I think it's very similar. It's just, it's very similar. It's like the next step. In other words, a lot of society has changed where people live together now, work together, the same jobs, and they don't have separate bathrooms and that kind of thing. But it just seems like the next level is maybe equal justice under the law, which a lot of people don't think is happening. And I see this stuff, and it's just amazing to me, and it just seems like it happens a lot, and I'm not sure why. I mean, I just don't believe the police are evil. I just don't believe that.
Do you think it's...
But I think that black guys get shot a lot more for no reason than I would. I just believe it. I see it all the time.
Do you think it's the fact that we live in an environment with more information, that these cases are getting spotlighted more than they used to be?
Yes.
And that's caused...
Yeah, because I think a black guy could have got shot in a small town in South Carolina 30 years ago, and it would never make the news. Ever. It just wouldn't. It would have to be New York City in a different situation, or LA or something, where it was right out in the public, But a lot of the other stuff you'd never make the news. It just wouldn't.
So you agree that most cops are fine. It's just
yes,
the bad eggs ruin it for everyone else.
Of course, come on. Come on. I don't believe it's a systemic thing. I think that it might even be a guy that's panics or not meaning to do it or whatever the reason,
There's definitely been, because now there was somewhere where in the body cameras where people are still getting shot from time to time, and there's definitely ones that you can say are, they're scared.
Yeah,
and they shouldn't be cops, obviously. But how do you weed them out?
Well, they should. Something should have happened along the way in their training or psychological profile, something. And it's unfortunate because it happens a lot. I mean, it happens all the time, and it still happens. And now people are like tired of it. So maybe now with the focus on it, I did read about a week ago about that the cameras on the cops have cut down on a lot of the mishandling or brutality and stuff like that, because they know
they're going to think at least one time before they do it.
Yeah. Now I know if they think a guy's pulling a gun and they shoot and they kill somebody, and I hope the guy has a gun and he's not going for like a pen or his wallet. Like, I still think they shot that guy in, where was it, in North Carolina or whatever. They asked the guy to show his ID. He goes to get his ID and they shoot him because then they think it's a gun. But they asked him to get his ID. So what's he supposed to do?
So what is the solution besides better training for police officers, more accountability?
And I think you have to... the problem is that it has to change one person at a time. In other words, you have to grow up in a family that doesn't downgrade another race just because they're another race. And I mean across the board. I'm not just saying one.
What do you think about going back to more community policing?
Yes,
and
totally.
Actually walking the beat and getting the trust of the
and having maybe a place like in OB. They have the community outreach there, and they have a cop in there sometimes
just to talk.
Yeah, because then you're talking about you recognize the people in the neighborhood, and you realize, okay, that's not some criminal. That's a guy that lives 3 blocks away and he walks down this street every day and he shops here. And I guess there still is a mistrust in the races. It's just unfortunate. I thought by now it would be better, but it did sort of backslide. There was a little backlash in the 80s, and I hate to say that the Reagan administration, when running for president, they capitalized on that
On what,
feeling of the
social
backlash of the white populace to the civil rights movement, and he used that to get elected.
We're saying now we need law and order,
or whatever. Now we're being discriminated against, and
Was there a slogan for that, or
no? It was just an understanding that enough was enough, and they used the affirmative action as an example of white people being discriminated against. There was a lot of ill feeling then, and then the busing thing was a disaster. It was just a bad idea.
Busing what?
When they would bus kids from different
neighborhoods.
Well,
they still do that.
But now it's elective.
Oh, okay. So before they were forcing kids to go to different high schools.
And they use that backlash and ill feeling as, we're back. And it set the whole thing back a little bit, I thought. But I mean, and then Obama gets elected president. So how bad could it be? You know what I mean?
Did that shock you that America elected a black president?
Not shock. Well, I was really hopeful, and to me, it was just that I was just hoping that but I figured a Democrat would get elected because
usually after Bush, right?
Right, and also you could almost see a pattern when a two-term president of whatever party it is. The other party could run me and get elected. It's
a high likely probability. I think in our history there hasn't been 16 years in a row of the same party.
No, it just doesn't because people shift.
Correct.
The other party gets energized. Sure. Number one, and then the middle of the roaders and the moderates are. Because they're fed up.
It might went a little bit too far.
Yeah, they're fed up, so they go the other way, and then the other guy gets elected.
We tried that. It's not better. Let's try that.
Yeah,
which probably was what happened now with a lot of these.
Yes.
But they say that they say that they lost. The Democrats lost the white workers, white working class. And they said, let's try Trump. We voted for Obama. We voted for him twice.
Right, and it's just that
which is reasonable. That doesn't make you racist. That makes it a reasonable.
No, I'm not saying it's racism. I'm saying that every time you have a two-term president, I'd almost bet the other party wins the next election.
So someone's like, why even have elections then, right? It's hard. It's hard to beat an incumbent, and even in Congress.
It's hard to beat an incumbent, but then after he's got his 2 terms. The other guy, it's a new guy and it's a new party.
That's why we disagree in this. That's why I want term limits for congressmen and senators. It's very hard to beat an incumbent. It's very hard.
Yes,
entrenched.
But it just seems like a curfew for an adult. And to me, the electorate has to be smarter and vote against the guy.
Oh, now you want now you want that, even though it has to do with advertising dollars, outreach that a new person.
Okay. How about if they don't? If there was a way to limit,
hey, I'm all for public funding. Funding of campaigns.
If there's a way to limit, I
mean, people forget
the problem with that. The people that have to vote for that are the people that don't want it.
The problem is that even in 2008, McCain said to Obama, "I'll stand by the pact, just public funding." Until Obama was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." Until Obama saw the mountains of cash that came in, and he outspent McCain like 4 or 5 to 1. It's easy to say that you're for just public.
He had to do that because it had Broad from Alaska. It could not be part of the government.
Oh, you're saying just because of
that was a reason enough.
That Broad from Alaska. You wouldn't mind looking at her for 4 years.
No, she wasn't. How McCain, a guy like that was a reasonable guy like that.
That was a big mistake.
Well, he got talked into that.
Oh, absolutely.
But how?
Do you remember? Do you remember what they thought about at the time, where they thought they wanted to do a two-party ticket with him and
Joe Mentum.
What the hell is his name?
Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman. Yeah, for a while they were floating the idea of McCain and Lieberman saying we'll just unify and be only 4 years to see what we can get done, and that went out the window though. It just went out.
Well, because the guys that run them, the guys behind that, the scenes are absolutely not.
So that brings another point though: the 2-party system. If it's ever possible to get away from that.
Well, that's why I don't think I hate to say it, God, this is going to sound like blasphemy, but the parliamentary system is not so bad because
coalition governments.
In other words, you elect the party, and then they decide who they want to be the president, which isn't such a bad thing because that's the guy then can work with them and get stuff done. In other words, if whatever party wins the Congress.
So would you rather have like a prime minister and president system, or two?
Well, no, they would still have the president, but in other words,
whoever wins Congress or Senate,
or some combination of that just puts their guy as the head of the government, and he's the president. That's what they do in England.
But would you do it based on our system, Congress or Senate, or figure out a system for both, like some sort of
some kind of a system,
some sort of like a senator's worth 10 Congress.
I don't know. Maybe they could have maybe they could do or
have the way the system works when there's a tie where one
guy
the House elects one, the Senate elects the other, vice president.
Something like, but I mean.
Which is always fascinating.
The reason that's okay is I think what happens is you might be able to. It's less contentious, I think, and the election is less contentious because you're voting for your congressman and senator. It's more about what they're about, and it's because the president is a lot of obviously is a lot of personality.
But doesn't that make Washington even more of an insider game then? Because then you're electing.
No, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying it's something to think about maybe. But I probably wouldn't.
I think
when it came down to it, I wouldn't want it probably.
Honestly, you're gonna hate me for saying this. I think you need to change the Constitution to limit the number of people in a particular party that can be in power one time. That's the best way you're going to be able to do it. And I don't care if that means you have a shadow third or fourth party that is kind of like the others. I want to at least limit it so that you have other parties that can at least try to get in there.
You mean a third party?
Third or fourth.
But you could look at that as chaos and nothing gets done.
No, I look at it as
disrupt the apple cart.
I look at it as the third party really represents how we are as a country, where you have a chunk of the country is fiscally conservative but socially more liberal, and neither party really represents that right now. You have parts of the people in both parties that do, but there's not one party that really represents that.
Right.
And if you had a party like that managed to get in the party somehow and not controlled by wacky evangelicals or people that are just that are more interested in gun rights versus anything else, that doesn't represent most Americans. That doesn't represent me and you, does it?
I don't think so.
So, I think that's what you have to get to. But how do they do that? Maybe a constitutional convention at some point has to do that. And at the same time, hey, Congressman, you only get to be in Congress for 12 years and get the hell out. Senators, you only can be in for I'll give you even 18 years and get the hell out. I think most Americans would be on board for that. I don't think most Americans would think that's unreasonable, especially if we have limits on the presidency.
Right.
Why not on the people that actually make the laws and vote on them? I don't know. You think that's crazy? Am I just rambling?
Yeah, no, I don't at all. And it's something that people have thought about forever. And the problem with it is the people that have to decide that are the ones that are there.
Unless the states pass it first and then threaten the Constitutional Convention, which hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But that's the counterbalance to that.
Maybe that's something to get excited about. Well, it used to be the conventions were really exciting. Now
the party conventions.
The party conventions, because
they decide the platform planks,
and they would it was real news. They had real newsmen on the floor because there was still a possibility of someone else.
Dark horse candidate.
Right.
Which people thought might happen with the RNC this time out, but it didn't happen.
Right.
It was just Cruz that didn't get the votes, and that was it. Would you have preferred to see someone like Cruz as president? At least that
Well, I think Hillary would have beat him.
You really think so?
Yeah, because he had no personality whatsoever, and he was really to the right. He was really, wasn't he? Like religious right and all that.
Cruz isn't.
He was portrayed that way, and
he was on a nutcase. He's a Tea Party sort of guy.
Yeah, that means he's a nut.
Oh, you don't like the Tea Party?
No, they're crazy. They're always saying how like when I remember when they were talking about raising the taxes for people in the top 1%. These guys are going nuts, and I'm going, you're a plumber. You don't make that kind of money. You're not going to get taxed, you idiot.
So why do you think that is? That you think a lot of people argue that the Republican base votes against their self-interest. Why do you think that is, or do you even agree with that? That
I think certain people do, yes, because they are against the Democrats socially. You know, maybe abortion rights. The other guy wants.
You don't think it's a principle thing? You think?
No, I think it's other stuff, and maybe they view the Republicans as jobs more oriented than the Democrats. You know, and they guys like that think the Democrats are run by, like, you know, leftists, women, people of color, and they're against all that, and as you know, and they don't see it that way, because it always polls out that way, that you get a certain amount of, you know, white males in low middle class or lower middle class that vote Republican because of the social aspect of the Democratic Party.
Do you think that still exists?
Totally.
20, 30, 40 years ago?
No, I think it still exists, yes. Have you visited Diane and Johnny? You visit them and then tell me it doesn't exist.
Frank, you're not supposed to talk about your personal...
I didn't say where they're from, but you visit them and then tell me.
And I would play devil's advocate and say there's a bunch of majority white counties that voted for Obama twice that voted for Trump in the last election. That's the reason he won. So
yes,
I don't think it's all about.
No, it's not all about that. But you asked me why a Republican in that economic strata vote against self-interest, and that's why they do.
You mean across the board?
Yeah, and it's socially they're against the Democratic Party.
I would say that's a lessening percentage year after year.
I would hope you're right, but I don't. It's not as fast or as much as I would like, but that's me, because I grew up in the 60s where I thought, all right, and I was shocked by the time the 90s rolled around. I was just shocked the way I would hear people 20 and 30 years younger than me, the way they spoke about, you know, race relations and stuff. It was as bad as it was before that, the 60s, and it just was a shocker to me.
So you've seen it come a long way, obviously.
Yes,
not perfect,
and backslide a little, but I mean, that's maybe just what has to happen. And I mean, nothing's perfect. It's not a perfect world.
Are you shocked that you've seen such an acceptance of gay marriage, gay rights?
No,
in such a short amount of time.
No, I didn't. No, I just don't understand. You know, the whole thing, like. It's just a small percentage of the population, and to me, it's not a lifestyle choice. I've never talked to a gay guy that decided one day that didn't know what he was from birth, and then so to me, if someone's born that way, then why hassle the guy? And if he wants to be with another guy, it's so hard to find someone in this life. Yeah, or woman with woman, but it's so hard to find someone in this life. You're going to put another restriction on it? Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Like, okay, what's the difference? It doesn't offend me. I mean,
I always thought it was funny.
Love is love.
I mean, it's antiquated now. I mean, there's still people that say, you know, a baseball player got in trouble for it a year or two ago, saying I don't agree with the lifestyle choice. They try to make it sound like you were like a swinger, where it's like this is your lifestyle choice.
Well, and also it's a religious thing. A lot of people think because it says it in the Bible, that means that it's a sin. So you can't do it, and they don't accept that you're born that way.
That was a choice to sin. So
you're right. So that's where it comes from. Of course, they ignore the shellfish regulation in there.
Oh, you know, shrimp cocktails.
You're right, because they you
can't live without shrimp.
Right,
let's not go nuts.
Yeah, let's not go crazy.
No lobster. What do you?
Yeah, right. You know, I mean. People pick and choose what they want, and I understand it's offensive. I don't know why, but I mean, to me, I think people have to live and let live and not be grudge holding and hating. But that's the whole thing to me. I mean, I'm still a child of the 60s, and I still believe that it's up to the person individually, and without people changing one person at a time, it's not going to change. You can change all the constitutional laws you want, but if people are still going to think what they think, and they have to start to think better.
So would you prefer it? One of the arguments against, which you can make an argument either way, one of the arguments against the Supreme Court declared gay marriage legal in the entire U.S.
Right.
A few years ago. One of the arguments against them doing that, not just because they thought it should be left to the states, was that they would prefer it, even if it took a few more years, for each state to do it on their own, to sort of catch up on their own before declaring it. This is what the states must do, to get people on board first.
Yes.
And there's pros and cons obviously to both, because if you wait for that, then people can't get married in certain states until the states pass it. Now it's not an issue anymore. So do you see it in some cases maybe it's worth it to hammer this is the law of the land, this is how it should be, and get people on board? Or you see that potentially turning people away from it earlier?
Well,
I'd rather get them up to speed. I'd rather let them learn on their own and get acceptable.
Right. Well, you'd like to think at some point they'd come along, but if you did that with race relations in the 60s, do you still believe, I mean, it wouldn't have happened.
I'm just saying that's the argument. I'm saying I believe in it, but that's the argument for let's get them on board for first.
Right.
And I say that's what's happening. It's not as an important issue, you might disagree with, but marijuana, though, state after state is slowly coming on board with
that. That to me is a better way to do that, because it's not really infringing on someone's right to live or be happy or be with the person they want to be,
or civil rights,
or go and into a restaurant and not be thrown out or treated like a second-class citizen. That's a totally different thing. That's just about getting loaded, and I mean, and I think it coming up that way is better. And to me, if a state really doesn't want to, that particular one, it doesn't have the same weight, don't you think? It's not the same thing.
There's now 28 legal medical marijuana states,
right? Which basically makes it legal if you get the card. I mean,
sure. I mean, it's probably different.
I mean, that's legal. Once it becomes medically
and
medical marijuana, it basically is legal.
And then recreation is 7 states, and then recently California, Massachusetts, Maine, and Nevada passed measures to legalize it. So that's 4 states, and California is the most. It's the largest state by population in the U.S.
And it also was the most liberal as far as marijuana law. Even before they made it legal, you had to be an out-and-out idiot to get busted for pot in California if you had just a little bit.
And you got to thank Arnold for helping. He's the one who started it. He decriminalized it.
Who?
As governor, Arnold, as the governor. So he's the one that sort of got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Arnold he got the joint rolling.
Right. A nice one, Patrick.
Well, he's on film in the 70s smoking up.
Right. And Arnold was accused every day of not being a Republican by his own people
because of stuff like
he was but in California, even if you're a Republican, you have to be socially liberal, otherwise you don't have a snail's chance.
But like I'm saying, there's a
snowball's chance in hell.
There's a party for people like Arnold that I think a lot of people in the middle would glom on to that. People that aren't, they would
lose the religious right.
Well, eventually that's going to be shut.
But if you're a Republican, I thought this when I lived in New Jersey, Republicans from Connecticut were essentially conservative Democrats or liberal. I mean, you
conservative couldn't tell Democrats, but they don't exist anymore.
You couldn't tell the difference. Those guys, they were Republicans, but they acted like socially they acted like Democrats.
That's the problem when you say about the third party. What they call blue dog Democrats don't really exist anymore. The more conservative,
and those were the guys that became what they called Reagan Democrat. That's when the party lost them, when they felt that the Democrats were leaning really hard to the left, and the average Joe felt disenfranchised.
So you've seen the last 35 years, and the Democrats move more to the left more and more. Republicans move more to the right more and more. Where maybe both parties used
to come to the center.
So most parties, in your opinion, were more closer to the center on a lot of stuff in the past.
They're especially individuals from certain states that you had to be that way to get elected. Like you couldn't get elected in Connecticut as a
social conservative.
So you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it.
Yeah. So you had to be a Republican.
And it was very difficult to get elected as a Democrat in Connecticut. So the only and they were pumped them out all the time.
But now you only can be a Democrat in Connecticut.
Now they went but I bet you it's a conservative type Democrat
or more centrist or moderate.
Definitely.
Well, it's interesting how things evolved that way, but I'm still hoping.
And it used to be that Vermont was always a Democrat and New Hampshire was always a Republican.
Really?
It always was that way. Yes. And I don't know if it still is, but I think it is.
Is New Hampshire still a state? No, they're still a state. You always forget New Hampshire's a state.
Not me. Well, I know people from there.
Do you really?
Well, my in-laws.
Oh, okay.
Evan Thea's
Have you ever been in?
Oh yeah, I've been in New Hampshire. Sure.
Is it sort of like woods?
It's woods. You can drive around back and forth from New Hampshire and Vermont and
not realize it.
No, it's just the same. It's just one big. It's just a big forest with small towns, and that's it. That's all it is. The whole area. Like upstate New York, people don't realize. It's not New York City. You go upstate New York, it's just woods, farms, and small towns.
Well, there's other. South Jersey's sort of like that. The Pine Barrens.
Yeah, that's another thing people don't realize. Like the northwest corner and the southwestern part of New Jersey is nothing like what people think New Jersey is like. They think of New Jersey as a road between Philadelphia and New York City. That corridor.
The turnpike. The thing is a turnpike and what's in between.
Right. And that part of New Jersey.
The Meadowlands, And
then across the river from New York,
Hoboken.
Like that. But there's a huge other parts of New Jersey that they wouldn't even realize they were in New Jersey. But that's every state, maybe.
Did you?
Because people, when they think of Arizona, what do you think of? Deserts and whatever, right? But the northern part of Arizona is mountains with full-on forests and winter and snow and everything. But you don't think of it.
New Jersey always gets that bad rap, Well, better for worse. You always had to defend New Jersey when you move out of state.
I think I became even a bigger Giant fan when I moved here than I was there because people would downgrade it. So I was jumping on board. So I was a bigger fan.
Well, I'm glad you're not a huge Chargers fan since they just left.
Well, I was. When I moved here, it was the beginning of the Air Coryell and Dan Fouts era when they were exciting. They scored 30 points a game. They broke all kinds of records. He invented an offense which people still copy. And it was easy to get on board because they were exciting. And to see them they've been in the city for 55 years and moved.
Wow.
That's...
Well, the owner's kind of a...
No, and I think he was... I was sort of on his side, and I thought the city was gumming up the works. But when you realize that he spent almost twice as much money to move as it would have cost him to stay, you realized he wanted to move.
He wanted out.
Because he wanted the franchise to go 2.5, 3 times the value just by moving.
God, I hope it doesn't. I hope it just stays the same.
Well, it won't because it's L.A. The same way if you buy a house in L.A. as compared to here, it's just worth more.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to sell a house than an $NFL team. That's overpriced by $1 billion.
But eventually the kids, if they don't run it into the ground, they'll sell it and it'll be worth a fortune because there's only 32 of them, and it's a small club, and they even eliminate people that could afford, like the guy from Dallas, the owner. What's that crazy nut?
Jerry Jones?
No, the Mavericks, the basketball.
Oh, Mark Cuban.
Yeah, he wanted.
To buy a football team?
And they didn't want him in as their circle.
They
figured out a way where qualify. The guy's worth $90 billion. And they didn't want him. Yeah, they don't want him. He's a loose cannon.
He's too liberal for them.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon. They look at him. What he does in the basketball, sitting
and he gets
courtside.
he taxed Trump. Maybe they didn't like that, you know. And,
well, this is way before Trump ever running, but they sort of eased him out.
He wasn't the traditional straight-laced suit and tie NFL
and he because they have to approve the sale, and they don't like it.
They don't like him.
They're like
they didn't
gangsters.
They didn't like him in the sports team owners' cocktail lounge.
Yeah, if they were gangsters, they would have invited him to the meeting and shot him in the head right there. I mean, that's the way those guys operate. The NFL, God, they're really weird. I mean, think about what they do.
Maybe they pull the strings in the government behind the scenes. They
God.
They have the money.
I'll tell you how scary they are. Tijuana, which you can pick up their signal in San Diego because it's close, would broadcast the blacked out Charger games, you know, and people were able to see the blacked out Charger games on the Spanish station or whatever it was, their CBS, and they would broadcast it. The government went there and tried to force them to stop and couldn't. The NFL went down there and they stopped it immediately. So I don't know what they told them, but it ended. And the government, the U.S. government, couldn't even get them to stop.
Well, they probably either paid someone off in the Mexican government and do it for them, or...
But it ended after about 2.5 years. Done.
They got a lot. They got more money than some countries. The NFL. I mean, Jesus, we're talking, you know.
And then I realized that they got some yank somewhere because the U.S. government could not stop them from doing it, but the NFL stopped them cold. Boom.
Money, Frank. Money
they threatened him with something because it ended immediately.
Well, you think that the NFL has their own mercenary army?
No, I don't think that way. I think they threatened him financially some way.
The NFL?
Yeah, I think they must have, because it didn't stop until the NFL went down there. Because the U.S., I'm telling you, the government sent all kinds of things, did all kinds of things, and they just shined them. We're our own country, we do whatever we want. And then they talked to the NFL reps, and then 2 weeks later, they was off the air. No more. So I don't know what they did, but they did something.
Oh, man.
And they get money when a team moves. All the owners, they got to pay.
They pay out
$500,000.
It is like a mafia, right? It's like you come into the territory, you got to pay.
They had to pay $500 million just to move, and then all the other owners divide that up, a piece of it.
Oh, Jesus! I mean, really? They don't have enough money, right? It's a penalty, right? Yeah. It's a tax. It's an owner tax. Well,
they're combine, it's a practice for scouts with stopwatches and little exercises, has higher ratings than like Major League Baseball or NBA playoff games. I mean, it's like insane.
Well, if you want to get the NFL, it's because there's only 16 games in a season. So each game is extremely important.
Yes.
Each game is like an event.
But I'm talking about events that aren't games, the draft.
That all defines those 16 games.
I get it.
The NFL has an ecosystem where one day of the week you are glued to your TV. You can't imagine not watching.
The Pro Bowl outdrew the Sunday night Yankee Boston Red Sox,
which is insane because the Pro Bowl is absolute garbage,
and it outdrew.
That's surprising because I don't know anyone who watches the Pro Bowl. It's just a chance to see, the NFL players one last time.
Degenerate gamblers,
and well, that too.
Well, it's the first game of the year too. It's in August.
Can you bet on the Pro Bowl game?
Yes.
Oh, how do you?
I don't know.
Can you bet in the dodgeball game they do now?
You can bet on the preseason games. Have a line.
We got to do that.
And the one gambler told me how to do it. You bet on certain coaches. Because there's certain coaches in the league that don't care about winning. They want to look at their players. And there's other coaches, especially newer coaches or guys from college a lot.
I want to win.
That get wrapped up in it and want to win the game. And usually a gambler who knows how to bet on the preseason, that's what he looks at. He looks at who the head coach is.
So you heard it from Frank. Make sure you bet against Belichick in the preseason.
Yeah, he doesn't care about that. No.
But the people setting the line don't realize that when they're setting the lines. They don't take that into account.
Maybe they do, but they set the line, and usually a coach like Belichick or Coughlin or guys like that, they're just looking at the future.
They're looking at third stringers get in there.
They want to see if this guy's going to make the team, and then or if a guy hadn't come back from an injury, they want to see if he can run and cut and whatever, and they'll keep him in a little bit, and then they yank him. They'll just get the starting quarterback in there a couple of series, see he's sharp, get him the hell out.
Makes sense.
And then they want to see the other kid in case somebody gets hurt. Can he play?
Yeah, we want to see Eli's backup. Well,
he always plays, but other guys, you don't think when Romo was the quarterback and he got hurt every year, they didn't want to see the other guy a couple of series?
Romo gets hurt every year.
Well, what do you think he's going to go, Houston or Denver?
He's gone no matter what. I don't think
he already's gone. I think they might have released him already.
Well, I didn't see the news for that. They released Peterson from the Vikings. Now we go from politics to people in a snooze about talking about football. But that's okay. It's fascinating still.
Yeah, Peterson. Well, the Raiders are already talking to him.
Oh, really? And he could play somewhere.
And the Vikings say they want him back. And I heard that he wanted to play on the Giants. He wanted to go there. So he's going to look at a team that
Giants need an offensive line before they can get a running back.
Yeah, but he's signed with it's just a slot on the team. They got to draft linemen because linemen very rarely, unless they want a ton, are released. But a lot of times they cut him and then they sign him back for less money. They do that all the time. That's another thing they got away with in the pros. There's no guaranteed contracts in the most injury-prone game that you're going to lose, and they just cut you too, and they don't owe you a dime.
It's a mafia, Frank. What does it say? The players' union doesn't have the
They got nothing.
They got nothing.
They got nothing. They wanted the big signing bonus, and they dangled that in front of them like a shiny necklace, and they ran over there, and because they don't have guarantee. The only guys that do, there's a couple of quarterbacks that have a little bit of a guarantee, and that's it.
I was going to say, you can sign a guarantee, but it's never like 100% guaranteed. It's like a part of it's guaranteed, right?
Yeah, but in every other sport, every guy signs a contract, and he's paid that. If you sign a 2-year deal, you get paid for the second year.
Why do you think it is? Because of all the injuries that happen in football? Is that part of it?
Well, it's the relationship between the owners and the union. And a lot of people thought that the old union guy was just working for the owners too, and he would offer them other stuff like. And a lot of the football players wanted the money up front because they wanted it now because they might get hurt.
Sure.
So instead of giving them guaranteed contracts, they give them the signing bonus. And they get all that money up front, and then they have a salary every year. But if they get hurt or they get cut, that rest of that contract is worthless, meaningless. Where if you're a baseball player, or a basketball player, or hockey, you sign a 4-year deal, you get hurt, or they cut you, you get paid.
Do you see that? You see that change eventually? Because can't even they work it into that there's some sort of well, then again, maybe no insurance company would insure an NFL player's contract though.
No, it's like insuring a circus performer.
Well, hockey's dangerous, not as dangerous as football, but hockey's
it's just they have the attrition they do in football.
No, they don't.
They just don't.
I mean, what was the average play in the NFL? Like 2.5, 3 years only. That's the average.
In the NFL, it's 3 years.
3 years? Yeah, hockey's longer than that.
And you see guys play for 10, so that means a lot of guys are playing for 1 year in the NFL.
Yeah, there's guys. I'd say the average. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I'd say without looking, the average hockey player plays for probably 8 to 10 years. I mean, there's guys that play for. Yager's been playing for 25 years, which is insane that he's still going. You know what I mean? Like Messi.
It's got to be like 8 years, 7, 8 years for a hockey player. More.
This because it's less strain on your joints skating. You're not pounding pavement or turf. You're not running that alone. Even if you are getting banged up.
Baseball players, my God, they're older than me. Some of those guys.
Well, now I'm seeing about the older players are complaining that there's a lot of these younger players not getting paid much, and it's almost like now they're.
Well, it's all the league's young now because I think that's one of the indications is a lot less juice.
Yeah, there's less, old guys can't hang
Because
around
they can't keep up anymore. And you look at when guys are leaving the league, and it's almost like, if you look up in the baseball encyclopedia, it's almost like the guys in the 60s. Like once they hit mid-30s, gone. And that's what's happening now.
Because the guys that are 23
are better.
Yeah.
And the other guys aren't kept alive by the juice anymore.
HGH, Frank.
Or HGH or whatever it is.
Their heads aren't increasing in size.
Right, but the older players all of a sudden aren't as good anymore.
Good. I mean, that's
no, that's the way it should be. Where they were
all right,
playing.
we're going off the rails here. We got to wrap this up, though.
Good.
Any other questions for me or anything? Or
no.
Are we going to figure this out next 4 years? Should I run for Congress, Frank?
No, don't do that. You'll ruin your life. Be happy. No, be happy.
But you can help people.
No, be happy. You won't be happy. You won't. You won't be happy.
Am I happy now, Frank?
You should be.
You don't think anyone that's in Congress is happy?
Maybe. Well, if they don't have a soul, you know what I mean?
Really?
They can't be. Because it's got to be frustrating. Their lives are torn apart. Their nephew could get arrested for something, and they're in the paper. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It's you don't have a private life at all.
I'm saying you could do it.
Well, because I don't give a shit about it.
Run for city council? No, you care.
No. I want to be less in the public.
Well, then this is a great sort of artifact for everyone.
Right, yeah, this is not going to happen a lot.
Well, I want to get you on because I think people would like an insight of someone of your age.
Right, okay, well, that was fun to do it, and, you know, I don't know how representative I am, a little bit. I mean, I was there.
You're not a total whack job leftist, so, you know. People...
No, I mean, I lean that way. I'm definitely that way, but... At a certain point, there has to be a little logic, and the president can never be that way because he has to be the president for everybody, not just me.
So let's hope that Trump is the president for everyone, not just his constituents.
But he don't think he's the president. He thinks he's the CEO.
Well, supposedly he had a decent State of the Union or joint. Was it technically State of the Union, but joint congressional speech. Last night.
But he's attacking the press before.
Well, that's scary. That should bother everyone. When you call the press the enemy of the people, that is scary.
That sounds like Putin.
That's scary. Well, that sounds like any
dictator,
tin pot dictator. You know, that's not cool. And
that's what I mean. Even if he thinks that. I mean, Nixon thought
that. Yeah, Nixon didn't say it publicly.
But he didn't say.
He said it on his tapes, maybe.
Right.
But not publicly.
And you know the guy's thinking it, and he's pissed off at the press, but that's part of the job.
Yeah, you got to know that people are coming after you.
It's the press's job to put the feet to the fire. He's not.
Yeah. So I'll say this: even if you're listening to this and you're a diehard Trump supporter, if you're not at least alarmed a little bit by someone calling the press the enemy of the people, I don't know what to say. And I'm not some sort of lefty friend. As Frank likes people. God. I get called that sometimes.
That's because
people are unreasonable, don't want to hear a disagreement with their
right. And sometimes, in the group of lefties I hang around with, if I go a little bit,
they call you some right.
Then I'm like, I'm like, come on, I'm just trying to.
Well, maybe some corporation shouldn't be taxed to death.
I mean, come on.
You got to find the middle ground, which I think we're going to get there eventually. Maybe not right now, but in time. I think people.
I'm very curious to see if he really starts to go off the rails. What the Republicans, their reaction to it. It's like, this is what we've been waiting for, so we could just go crazy, or this guy we got to
put country first, right?
Rein him in a little bit.
We got to put country first, or else.
We got to go.
Well, I think a big test is going to be in 2 years. What happens with the House election?
Oh, I think it'll flip a little bit because it'll be the typical backlash against the new president's first 2 years, no matter who he is. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Doesn't that happen every time?
It happened in 2010 as a reaction to Obamacare.
Yes.
Probably, and as a demand.
Yes, and then it probably happened to Clinton. It happened to Bush.
I know, Clinton.
It
Clinton got destroyed. Remember?
and it happened to Bush too, didn't it? And I think it happened to his father once too.
I'm not sure. I don't remember that. I was too young in '90 to know what happened.
But I'm pretty sure that happened too.
Yeah, midterms are always sort of pushback,
correction
or correction,
like the market correction.
All right, Frank. I'm gonna get going.
That's
I need
it.
a taco. That's it for this podcast. Not Too Common with Pat Contry. Frank, thanks for letting the kids know
and is
what's
Ian
up.
back in the saddle
For the CU podcast? This isn't the CU podcast. This is my second podcast, my non-gaming podcast, Frank.
Oh, yeah, right.
You don't want to talk about the Xbox and the Nintendo Switch system, do you? No.
It's not that I don't want to talk about it, is I have no knowledge of the subject.
Well, Ian came back for an hour for the last podcast. Thanks for mentioning him, but then he was too hurt. I had to bring him back home. He was in pain after an hour. But,
that's an hour more than he's done in the past 2 months.
4 months.
4 months, okay, so it's something.
But we'll see you again. Coming up, I will be talking to, in the future, Mark Bussler from Classic Game Room on YouTube, and a longtime retro game reviewer. And Frank's sort of looking at me like I'm crazy about
No, I'm trying to think if I know the guy.
You never met him.
Okay. Because I've met some of your minions there.
And then other minions, great. And then other YouTubers in the future and other people. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.
Okay. See ya.
Thanks again to Frank for taking some time out of his day to discuss politics and the NFL as well. A little bit of baseball in there, I think. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Podbean, on the Google Play Store, wherever you may be. You can always show your support by rating the podcast on iTunes or the Google Play Store, leaving a comment, and also sharing the podcast on social media. And if you really want to support me, I have a Patreon account, and that's patreon.com/PatContry. And in the future, like I said, we'll be talking with Mark Bussler and other YouTubers lined up. And if you want to maybe email some suggestions or topics to talk about on the Not So Common podcast, it's notsocommon@thepunkeffect.com. And we'll see you next week.